Good day, I am Eric Ocampo, and today I will be talking about appreciative inquiry, the five principles of appreciative inquiry, and what makes appreciative inquiry different from other organizational change models. So, what is appreciative inquiry? Appreciative inquiry is an approach with the aim of improving effective leadership development and organizational and societal change. This method is used to boost innovation among organizations, and appreciative inquiry may be applied within the organization's activities such as strategic planning, organizational culture, and to increase the momentum of initiation. The core idea behind appreciative inquiry is that problem solving perspectives have created inefficiencies and suboptimal outcomes. Fixing what is wrong is answered through a negative or a deficit based approach, and appreciative inquiry aims to have a more positive approach. There are five principles of appreciative inquiry that were developed in 1990 by Copperrider and Srivastava. The first principle is the constructionist principle, which states that organizations are co-constructed by the discourse of the participants' interaction, and the purpose of the appreciative inquiry is to generate new stories, language, and ideas. The second principle is the principle of simultaneity. This suggests that our inquiries into human systems can cause them to change. The first questions we ask can shape how people think about it and discuss things. This in turn affects how they learn things and discover. And according to Copperrider, there is no such thing as a neutral question, in the sense that passionate and persistent inquiries in specific directions will lead the change to those directions. The third principle is the poetic principle. The story of the organization is being co-authored by the people within it through their stories, and choosing the topic of inquiry can change the topic of the organization. The fourth principle is the anticipatory principle, which states that our actions are guided by our vision of the future. And through appreciative inquiry, we can create positive images and visions of our organization's future that will impact what we do in the present. The last principle is the positive principle. And in order to achieve positive organizational change, positive sentiments are required. Lasting change relies on social connections and positive effect among people. These positive emotions include, but are not limited to, hope, inspiration, camaraderie, and the strengthening of social bonds. So, what makes appreciative inquiry different from other organizational change models? The main difference between appreciative inquiry and other organizational change models is that appreciative inquiry focuses on the best of what is and using it as a platform to build into future decisions. Compared to more traditional methods that focus on the pitfalls and problems, appreciative inquiry asks unconditionally positive questions that focuses on the strength and weaknesses that already exist in the organization. This includes both the internal and external. A positive approach leads to a more extraordinary performance through the reinforcement of aspects such as relationship, culture, aligning individual goals with the organizational goals, promoting innovation, and collective action.
For the components of an appreciative inquiry process, whether you're using appreciative inquiry one-on-one or with 1,000 people, the AI process will follow four distinct phases, called the 4D cycle. Number one is discovery. Participants explore the best of what is, identifying the organization's strengths, best practices, sources of excellence, vitality, and peak performance. Second is dream. Participants envision a future they really want, a future where the organization is fully engaged and successful around its core purpose and strategic objectives. Third is design. Participants leverage the best of what is and their vision for the future to design high-impact strategies that move the organization creatively and decisively in the right direction. Lastly is destiny, sometimes called deploy. Participants put the strategies into action and revising as necessary. Appreciative inquiry has its theoretical framework in positive psychology and positive organizational scholarship. First developed by David Cooper-Ryder and colleagues at Case Western Reserve University. AI has since been employed and tested by scholars and practitioners around the world. Three concepts form the foundation, sometimes called the three-legged stool of appreciative inquiry: appreciation, inquiry, and wholeness. First is appreciation. To appreciate is to recognize the best in people or the world around us. Appreciative inquiry draws on the strengths of individuals and organizations. These strengths become the foundation on which the future can be built on. Second is inquiry. To inquire is to ask questions. The 4D cycle invites participants to ask questions so they can learn from one another and together identify a shared vision of the future. Participating in an AI process requires an attitude of curiosity and a hunger for discovery. Lastly is wholeness. The final AI tenet of the wholeness encourages participation from all levels of an organization, knowing that the best ideas often emerge from unexpected places. Additionally, AI encourages seeking outside perspectives. It is a whole system process.
Social constructionism. For the origin of social constructionism, it was introduced in the 1966 book of Social Construction of Reality by sociologists Peter L. Berger and Thomas Luckmann. Berger and Luckmann's idea were inspired by other sociologists by Karl Marx, Emil Durkheim, and George Herbert Mead. In particular, Mead's theory, which is symbolic interactionism, which suggests that social interaction is responsible for the construction of identity that was highly influential. So, what is social constructionism? Social constructionism, it is a knowledge that many aspects around us are not real. They only exist because we give them reality through social agreement, such as nations, book. It will not exist in the absence of human society. Secondly, observes how the interactions of individuals with the society and the world around them gives meaning to otherwise worthless things, and that creates reality of the society. In addition, social constructionism should not be confused with social constructivism. So, what is social constructivism? Social constructivism is the idea that an individual's interactions with her environment create cognitive structures that enable them to understand the world. This idea is often tracked back to developmental psychologist by Jean Piaget. While the two terms spring from differently scholarly traditions, they are increasingly and used interchangeably. Social constructionist typically agrees in these three typical points. First is knowledge is socially constructed. Second is language is central to social construction. Third is knowledge construction is politically driven. So for the first one, knowledge is socially constructed. Social constructionists believe that knowledge arises out of human relationships. Thus, what we take to be true and objective is the result of social processes that take place in historical and cultural contexts. In the realm of the sciences, this means that although truth can be achieved within confines of a given discipline, there is no overarching truth that is more legitimate than any other. So for the second one, language is central to social construction. Language abides by specific rules, and these rules of language shape how we understand the world. As a result, language isn't neutral. It emphasizes certain things while ignoring others. Thus, language constrains what we can express as well our perceptions of what experience and what we know. So for the last but not the least, knowledge construction is politically driven. The knowledge created in a community has social, cultural, and political consequences. People in a community accept and sustain community's understanding of particular truth, values, and realities. When new members of a community accept such knowledge, it extends even further. When a community's accepted knowledge that becomes policy ideas about power and privilege in the community become codified. So for the example of social constructionism is for the first one is that the idea is for girls and blue for boys. So it is an example of a social construct related to gender and the color of the items. It is a collective perception that a particular color can be associated within a certain gender is not an objective representation of truth or fact. Instead, it is a social convention that came to have meaning within the context of society. And for the next one is fashion. The idea of what apparel is considered fashionable is an example of social construct that changes quickly. What is fashionable this year may be not fashionable in the next. It is based on how what designers create and influencer shares catches in the larger society. And for the third one, money. It is a common Example, currency used as money is made of paper and metal. It only has value because people in the society assign value to it. Before paper and money and coins existed, people used other items that had value to exchange for goods and services.
So another example that we have here is about gender roles. So we all know that gender is the classification that we have in our society, which is most likely to be male and female only. But then the social construct that we have about it is that we are accepted in our society by means of being a male or a female. But now we have a gender ideology, which are the set of beliefs about our roles in the society. So, the gender system that has been constructed in our society is about telling us how to act. So, a male must be masculine, he must be strong, he must have a deep voice. He must have broad shoulders or whatsoever. And then a female must act gently. She must wear modest clothes. She must be a stay at home wife. And a female is not that vocal compared to men. And now our society or our culture is evolving and it is being more open and more vocal about the changes when it comes to gender roles. So nowadays, men are being welcomed to be emotional. Men are also vulnerable and can be fragile if they wish to do so. Females are also capable to do manly things, if that's how they call it. So, with the changes that are happening in our society right now, the gender roles or the ideas about genders are being more flexible and being debunked. And what's important about it is that people are now free to express themselves, not just because they are male or female, but then they are free to express on how they see themselves and how they want to connect with our society.
So here are some examples of social constructionism in a workplace. So first, starting with job position or tasks based on gender. So we live in a world where it was once or maybe until now in some organizations that women or females are underestimated. There is a societal idea that they are soft and competent and does not fit in a workplace, meaning that they should just be housewives. And also for men, it is a stigma that men are only good at work or job tasks which requires physical strength. Social constructionism is viewed in a workplace where the competency or capability of these employees are based on their gender. But in these modern times, men are also welcomed in the corporate world and women are also eligible to do work that requires physical strength. So it may be inevitable that there are still judgments about this topic, but one thing's for sure, one's gender or sexuality does not define one's competency in a workplace. So, with different levels of grit, capability, determination, and hard work, anyone can be best at their own field regardless of their gender. Another example is age. So, there was a time when it became a hot issue with the comparison on how senior citizens in other countries can still work and how senior citizens here in the Philippines are being discriminated against, or in some cases, some organizations don't even welcome them. So, the view of having an employee at an old age being hard to work with, incompetent, stubborn, ineligible to be techie, and tends to drag the flow of workplace. But just this August 2021, according to the Summit Express and to Lolo Willie has been a call center agent for 7 years for an international account. He admitted that applying for the job wasn't easy, but he didn't give up despite over 12 rejections. But after these rejections, he managed to be accepted by a BPO based company. With this real life scenario, it just shows that old age is not a burden to someone who has willingness to work. In fact, people with old age tend to have lots of experience in hand, and it may be helpful for the organization that they long to work with. And last but not the least, the view of social constructionism when it comes to physical attributes. I once hosted a webinar and then the guest speaker asked a business owner about a situation where two ladies were applying for a position in her business. One looks like Catriona Gray, but isn't competent enough for the position. And the other one has dark skin, she's fat, and is short, but she is competent for the position that she's applying to. And then the business owner answered that she will just hire the one who looks like Catriona for the reason that she will be an asset to the company and the other applicant might not attract customers to her business. So this is a real life situation on how a lot of people are being discriminated against for their looks. Things like height, weight, skin color, facial features, physical disabilities, and more. These are just some of the factors on how society builds a culture or a perspective on how someone should be qualified for a job. Everybody has different pegs or types on how something or someone is appealing to them or not. But what they can't deny is that the standard on the ability of an employee to be competent or to perform has a universal standard and looks aren't just the end of it. So that's it for our presentation for today about social constructionism and appreciative inquiry.